basic way, the basic idea was that a lot of sellers on Etsy are, periodically put items on sale in their shops. And we don't really have an easy way on Etsy to showcase that, so we were trying to put a little bit more of a spotlight on things that were already happening. So I think the principle was a good principle, and the idea of putting it on the weekend was really just to establish some regularity for the shoppers to understand what they can find on Etsy, and maybe the idea that during your leisure time on the weekend that you might find something special that's on sale. I think the principle was a good one. I think that the execution failed in a couple of ways, and the biggest way that it failed was the language that we used to promote it. I wasn't happy with that. I think, to go back to what I said up front, if we believe in the value of handmade, and if we believe in, sort of the beauty and the quality of craft, then I think we shouldn't use words like deals. And that's what I personally learned, and we won't be doing that outside of after the end of October. We have made commitments to some Etsy sellers who had already planned sales through the end of October, so we'll honor those commitments. We are looking for ways to kind of highlight, showcase if people decide to have sales. I know some teams have actually done that, and we'd like to be able to support that. I think the fact that we can't easily do such a thing other than, for example, through email or through 1 or 2 banner placements on the site speaks to a lot of work that we have to do beyond the sale point, but I'll come back to that. The bigger question that you had was, okay, what about couponing and refunds, and the fact that the only way that you have, if I may, I think what your question really is, you're being so nice about it, is, it's really clunky for you guys to have a sale, and you have to kind of execute it through PayPal in a way, if I'm reading you correctly. And we don't provide the functionality to make it easy for you all to have coupons and sales. So the first point is, that's in our interest too, to do that. I would love to have, some easier functionality for sales, coupons. Frankly, I would love to have Etsy gift cards, so I could give to my friends and say, you want to come to Etsy, it applies in any shop. The big, kind of nugget that we have to crack in order to do those things, and we are working, I would say right now on the early stages of it, is the issue is that we do not own the payment system. So how many people here are using PayPal to transact, right? Almost all of you. Are there any people in the room using something other than PayPal? Okay. So that, you're free to use whatever you want. It so happens that, lots of people use PayPal. So just to kind of, you guys probably all know this, but I always like to put the context first and then come back to the question. So the context here is, if you look at the e-commerce space, the 2 big behemoths in e-commerce in the industry are Amazon and eBay, historically, right? Both of those companies are banks, right? You don't think of it like that, but you have an Amazon account, you have one-click checkouts because they have all your information and they're processing all your stuff. And eBay is also a bank. Why is eBay a bank? Because they bought PayPal. eBay owns PayPal. So these 2 large e-commerce companies that have really become the far and away biggest e-commerce companies globally, realized pretty early on that in order to sort of have a holistic experience for the buyers, they needed to control this payments process. And I will point out also that both of those companies are publicly traded companies. They went public early in their lives, and why is that important? Is because they had early in their lives enormous amounts of capital, money. And why is that important? Well, because it costs a lot of money to be a bank. It's a complicated business. And so I'm pointing that out because the way Etsy came about is a lot different. Etsy is a marketplace, and we connect makers and buyers, but we don't own the payment system. So when Etsy was formed in 2005, the guys who formed the company, they weren't they weren't experts in trying to figure out how to make the payment system work, or to, establish credit card processing with Etsy as a merchant of record early in its life, because these were young guys right out of college, and they were thinking about an idea. They weren't thinking, let's make a global website that's going to serve millions of people, right? They just, you know, that's how it was. So here we are, we find ourselves 4 years into it, and as you all know, when the buyer gets to the end of the transaction, they actually have to go off to PayPal to complete the transaction, and I know that causes issues for all of you, beyond the fact that we can't easily do coupons or sales. It causes confusion with the buyers. Believe me, this is one of the things that I think as a company we're really going to have to figure out strategically. So the short answer to your question, and come back to your question, is the reason right now that we can't easily provide coupon functionality or sales functionality. It's not impossible. I think if we put our minds really to it and made that our top priority, we could figure something out, I'm sure, because there's a lot of smart people. It's just that it's made more complex by the fact that we're not in this transaction, right? You guys are transacting directly with your buyers, and that's all happening over at PayPal. So, we would have to find a way to kind of sort of develop some kind of middle something if we wanted to continue with the way the site works today. Or we could completely change the way payments work. And that's a bigger project that would take, something that we would have to think about over